Hello everyone, so welcome to also Bespoke Butler's channel. Today I'm going to do my best to save you and your clients money. This is an absolutely essential skill for a house manager to be able to manage the accounts of the household. It's literally probably number one skill that you're going to need. Now, this will also, for those of you who aren't house managers, anyone who manages their own accounts at home will find this really useful. I recently implemented these in my own home like I would have done for a client, and I have basically halved my household expenditure just by cutting all the waste and all the unnecessary things that I was paying out. So I'm going to try and give you a few tips to how to do the same. Now, today we're continuing in our house management syllabus. So last week we looked at SOPs and creating them, and today we're going to save money. We're looking at how to manage your household expenses. Now, the beauty of this is it works really well whether you are a house manager looking after a large property or any other sort of facility, to be honest, or even if you're just at home and you're trying to save a bit of money on your household bills. Because one of the most crucial things, and I really can't emphasize this enough, is just because you're looking after a billionaire and a billionaire's property, that does not mean you have carte blanche to spend a lot of money. Do not, so this is probably number one rookie error for new house managers who are doing it for the first time. They think this person's rich, they don't care how much things cost. That honestly could not be further from the truth. The first and most important thing to do when you're looking after your household expenses is you need to do accurate spreadsheets that show every single expense going in and out. For your first probably couple of months at a new property that you're looking after, I would keep the status quo. Don't try and make any drastic changes to start with, because you need to understand what these expenses go on. So look at them very, very closely, all the money going in and out, and then you need to correlate that into a chart. Now, you can do exactly the same thing for your own home as well. So whether it be a client, a business, a home, exactly the same process. Use either bank statements or the spreadsheet that you've created, and then go through and get a highlighter or a colour, or do it on your computer, it doesn't really matter. But just look at every expense and put them into one of these headings. So, we've got negotiable, necessary, unnecessary, wasteful, and incorrect. Now, there's nothing that will be on those expenses that will not come under one of those headings. Negotiable. Now, really, for negotiable, we're mostly talking about the big things, but it's actually probably the easiest things. So things like your household bills. Now, household bills are constantly negotiable unless you happen to be within a certain contract for a certain amount of time with a company. You can negotiate your costs. Water, electric, doesn't matter. You can negotiate. The more you're spending, the more you can negotiate. If you've got a huge property and you're spending £1,000 a week up, you have got a big amount of negotiation, because they do not want you to go to a different provider. If you tell them that you're going to go for a different provider if that cost doesn't go down, they will change it. If they don't change it, go to another provider. Go through with it. Go do it. There's a lot of websites to help you with this as well. There's Go Compare, there's Compare the Market, there's Money Saving Expert, there's loads of them. If we're talking about a really big property which has a really big bill, there's also specialist brokers, specialist agents that will do this for you. They take their money, they get a cut from the energy companies for choosing that energy company. So it doesn't cost you or your client anything, but they can get deals beyond even what you can get in your most tenacious negotiating. Or probably depends how tenacious you are. I mean, some of you guys are probably like a bulldog and you're really gonna go for it, and if you can do that, your client is gonna love you. You're not there to make friends with these energy companies, and I would never be rude. That doesn't get you anything. But be tenacious and be dogged. Just keep at it. So that's negotiable. There's lots of other things that would come under negotiable as well. You know, there's it's very simple. Anything that you can negotiate, negotiate. The price is never the price. This is one thing that I've really learned, especially working for a lot of Middle Eastern clients, where the emphasis is always that the price is never the price. Everything is negotiable, and that's something that I really learnt from that culture, and they are totally right. If you actually, you know, if you're British like me, it doesn't come naturally to negotiate a price, but if you try, it works. Necessary. So these are the things that cost a certain amount of money, and there's really no way around it. That is just how much they cost. Okay? So those are what they are. That's staying as it is. Unnecessary. You know, are there subscriptions which are not being used? Are there various different things that are being regularly bought and thrown away? You know, if this is your own household, it could be something as simple as, you know, are you buying a kilo of carrots a week and using half a kilo of carrots a week and throwing the rest away? It's just an example, but that's the sort of thing, you know. And that ties into the next one, which is wasteful. But whatever it is, it might be something like a Netflix subscription when you've got Sky and you never actually use that Netflix, and you're like, why are we paying that? That's not a slight at Netflix. It could work the other way around. You know, from all the companies, they all have relative merits, but if it's not being used, get rid of it. Wasteful. Now, this could be anything. When you're buying things, you've got to look at the most logical and best value way to buy them. For example, when I buy flour, I make all my own bread, all my own cakes, everything like that. So I buy 16 kilogram sacks of flour to do this. The cost price of that is very low. The shelf life is long, so I'm using it. There's zero waste. Now, but if I was to be bulk buying something with a short shelf life and just thinking, oh look, that's a good value per kilo for that, but then I throw half of it away, that is not a good value per kilo. So you've got to look at those two things. And then incorrect. Most households will have bills going out that actually shouldn't be. They're wrong. They're for something that doesn't exist anymore. They're paying someone that doesn't work there. Believe it or not, in a big household this happens. People are still paying people to do something they haven't done it for years. You could be paying a direct debit to a window cleaner who doesn't even clean your windows anymore. This really does happen. So you need to look at that, and those ones that you need to do immediately, get rid of all of those. Now, when we're talking about wasteful and getting the best price, food is probably one of the most wasteful things that's bought, certainly in the West. Huge amount of waste for food products. What you need to do, and this is what I've done, which is literally way below half the amount I'm spending on food, I can tell you, is I'm planning my menus weekly. I'm not thinking to myself, oh, this day I want beef, this day I want chicken, this day I want sausages. Yeah? I'm thinking, right, I'm going to do this meal this day. That requires these items. They can be used for an amount of time. I will buy enough to do those days. Can I cook some of the things in the oven at the same time to save power that can be used the next day. Is that going to impair the flavour? Is it going to improve the flavour? So you're planning, say for example you do, and this is what your grandparents would have done, exactly the same as your grandparents would have done. If you're doing your Sunday roast and you're going to cook stick a load of vegetables in, more than you're going to eat that day, you've got meat and vegetables for your soup there's your lunch the next day, or your supper that day. You've got, have you got enough meat left to make a curry or something like that ongoing? You can get a lot of meals out of that one roast. It's going to use a lot less power and there's going to be no waste. That's what we want to see. When you're throwing away bones, I only want to see them as just as bones. And in a big household, there's staff to feed. So yes, you're using the choicest cuts to feed the clients, but you've also got to feed the staff. So think about what you can repurpose and reuse these things for staff food for the week. Like personally, I and obviously with your clients, you're not going to tell them how much meat they should and shouldn't eat. But on a personal note, I think that most of us, certainly in the West, are eating a larger than necessary amount of meat. When you look at the proportion of meat to vegetables on the plate, the meat should be, a quarter or less of the dish. And you'll find that saves you a lot of money and it improves your health. It's going to make you fitter, stronger, live longer. There's no downside to it, okay? So, next thing on the agenda is looking at how to plan your costs. And so if I give you some examples of costs which may be going out, and I've certainly experienced this in large households that I've been managing in the past. Gardening costs. You might be paying external contractors to come in and do your gardens for you, heavy landscaping, whatever. Look at what they're actually doing. Is that the right course of action? If you're looking at these teams, how often are they coming in? What are they doing? Quite often what you'll see is you'd get much better value employing a gardener full-time. Because, for example, say your cost for the year of these contracting company is £40,000, okay? For that £40,000 you will get a good gardener. They will be full-time looking after your property. They will do the garden, they will help out with maintenance, they will help out with a lot of stuff. You've gained a full-time member of staff by getting rid of a third-party team of contractors that you're not necessarily their top priority. They look after a lot of different properties. They'll be in a couple of times a week. They make their profit by piling jobs on top of each other, and that's how they make their profit. Conversely, you might find the opposite. You have to look at things as that's not just a one-stop answer. You might find the opposite. You might find that you have a member of staff who spends a lot of their time unutilized. Now, would you be better off using a contractor as and when needed, even if they were at a higher price? Would it be better to have someone in when they were needed rather than just have someone waiting around to be needed? It can work either way. You need to look at it on a balance sheet. How much are they utilized? How much do they cost? Also look at how they can be more utilized. Like I was saying with the gardener, can he help with the maintenance? The butler team, can they help with the garden? The housekeeping team, can they do waiting for the dinners? Can they come and help with the service? Most of the time the answer to all these questions is yes, they can help. People can cross-pollinate between departments. This has to be done cleverly. You want to do that in a way that not only decreases costs but also increases their enjoyment of the job, because people actually get bored doing the same thing every day. So even though you're asking people to do more work, you can actually improve their job satisfaction by doing that, so everyone wins. You know, you go and talk to the footman, the butler, whatever, and say to them, like, the clients are away, would you like to go and use the ride-on mower to help out the gardener and go up and down in the sunshine with the mower? Now, the gardener might think doing the mowing is a bit of a chore and really want to get on with doing the raised beds or whatever else. The butler might think, do you know what, I very rarely get to go outside in the sunshine. I'd absolutely love to do that. Everyone wins. And the client wins because they haven't got to pay an additional person to come and assist the gardener, while the butler's actually not got much to do. So these are the things. And, you know, as I was saying, I'm going to put this into your own private household. Same difference. If you've got time in the evening where you're not doing something, why don't you make yourself some bread? Why don't you learn to sew? All these other things which actually will save you a huge amount of money. Fixing your own clothes, baking your own bread, making your own cakes, all these things will save you money, but they're also therapeutic and enjoyable. So it's a hobby as well. So it's another one of these situations where it's a win-win. Darning your own socks, which would have been a staple until very recently. It's only very recently that people have thrown away socks as soon as they get a little hole in them. That's because socks now tend to be cheap, rubbish socks, made out of polyester or cheap cotton. They go in the bin as soon as they're finished. Just 40 years ago, no one would have considered that. They bought really good quality socks, and they'd have kept them by darning them and looking after them. Better for the environment. Better because the sort of people that make high quality garments generally have a much more ethical way of employing their staff. They're not running sweatshops with people making thousands of pairs but being paid almost nothing. Are they made domestically? You know, if you live in the US or the UK, you know, can you buy something that's made there rather than buying something that's made on the other side of the world? Again, better for everyone. One thing that, you know, talk about good quality socks, one thing which is a massive false economy is buying anything cheap. If you can afford it, buy the best. A really good quality oven will last 30 years, no exaggeration. A cheap oven will last 3 years. Now, assuming the good quality oven is not 10 times more expensive, especially including delivery and fitting and all this, assuming it's not 10 times more expensive than the good quality oven, then already you're saving. If you can afford to go all the way up to something like an Aga, they'll last 100 years. So okay, they're £10,000 to buy, but if you look at that over the course of 100 years, that is incredibly good value. Of course, you have got to also be able to afford to run the thing, because it's on 24/7, which is slightly different. Now, you know, like I said, the biggest false economy is cheap goods. If you can afford something good, buy something good. Probably the one exception to that is expensive cars, because expensive cars actually require more maintenance and last less time than cheap cars, but that's more a case of just having the car you like, because, you know, I've looked after fleets of vehicles, and I can tell you that vehicles which are up in the £100,000 plus category are far more fragile. They don't last. Bits are always falling off them. And next to that, you've got a cheap Ford or, you know, a Vauxhall or Chevrolet, something like that, and the things are practically bomb-proof. They never go wrong. So that's the exception to the rule there. Another thing is, I go back to myself with not wasting stuff. This is a lesson that I've really learned from working with other cultures, sorry. In my team, I've had people from all around the world, Philippines, Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, Malaysia, everywhere. And they all have a very different way of looking at things. But one thing that you do learn is not wasting things. I think in Europe especially, we come, and the US the same, we come from a very wasteful society where we tend to use something once, throw it away. Now, when you work with teams and everything, even the little food bags, which you definitely think of as disposable, every single one of them is washed up and dried, carefully put away for the next use. Tin foil is washed, pressed, dried, ready for the next use. An appliance breaks, they send it off to get repaired. You know, if the client doesn't want it anymore, they'll send it back to the Philippines to get it fixed and carry on using it. You know, nothing is wasted, and this is something that I've learned so much from those other cultures, and really tried to implement that for myself, because it's not just a matter of money, it's a matter of the environment, and it's a matter of just being more ethical in the way we live. So I think that's very important, and I think that's something that the clients understand and appreciate as well. You know, they don't want to see you wasting stuff, I can assure you that. People you looked after, say if they're first generation billionaires, so they've made £1 billion or $1 billion within their lifetime. When you think how exceptional that is, these people are intelligent, they're cunning, they're canny, they are not going to let you just run wild with their money. I'll tell you a story to highlight this. So I trained, a few years ago, I trained a new house manager for someone, for a client. Now at the time I didn't have this particular element within my training. I kind of thought of it as being, I don't know, unnecessary. I was wrong. I trained them for a solid month in pretty much everything you can think of, apart from this. I get a phone call from the client that I've trained this house manager for, basically saying the guy's an idiot. What's he doing? So this is what had happened. The client had said to him, go and get me some holdalls. I want to take my winter clothes away to my other house for storage. Just get some big holdalls, pack everything up, move it across, done. That was the full, so basically that was the full instruction. Oh, he told him how many holdalls to get. I forget how many it was, say 5 or 6, maybe more, but big holdalls. So there's certainly an element of common sense that should come in at this point. But what this gentleman did is first thing he did was just jump straight into a Hackney carriage, a metered taxi, probably the most expensive way of getting around London. Asked the taxi to take him to Peter Jones, which is a large department store in London, for those of you who don't know it, which, funny enough, was only about a 15-minute walk from the house, so, you know, one would wonder why you'd need a taxi in the first place. Then he told the taxi to wait outside while he was shopping. Now, those of you who live in London or who have been to London, you will know that in central London there is a black cab going past every 30 seconds, very much like New York and other big cities. There are a constant stream of cabs. It's not like, you know, it's not like you're in the middle of nowhere. But anyway, he told this cab to wait. He was in there for however long. He bought, I think it was 3 very expensive holdalls, like designer holdalls. They were also fairly small. that was all they had. So then he went to another shop in the same taxi, did the same there. They only had a couple. Went to another shop in the same taxi. They only had a couple. Then came home. By the time he got back, the brief had been to buy some holdalls purely for transportation of clothes from one house to the other without them getting damaged. This was not about the luggage that the gentleman of the house travels with. You know, that's not what he was expecting. The taxi bill was over £100 just for the taxi. The holdalls were, again, hundreds of pounds. Like, you know, communally speaking, you know, maybe £1,000 worth of holdalls. And he then presents this bill to the client. At which point the client is incredibly cross, because that's not what he's asked him to do. He's spent a lot of his money. Now, it's not that the client couldn't afford it. The client is a billionaire. This amount of money is literally nothing to him. And that's what the new house manager was thinking. He was thinking, well, this amount of money, £1,000, so we say, is nothing to him. He earns that in a matter of seconds. But £1,000 for something that should have cost a couple of hundred is disproportionate, and that's what the problem was. Never ever assume that you can overspend on a project, whether it's buying holdalls, whether it's having a summer house built, whatever it is. Never overspend on a project, because you will not get thanked for it. You'll probably get fired for it, is what will actually happen. I mean, this particular client got him to take them back to the shop. I think, if I remember rightly, he didn't even have all the receipts. He'd managed to lose the receipts between actually presenting them to the client. You know, he hadn't got a receipt from the taxi. So there was a lot of stuff there that he almost didn't get. In the end, the client did pay him for it, just purely for goodwill. But he did not stay long in that position. And if you want to stay a long time in that position, that is not the sort of mistake you can afford to make, because it's a game changer. And so I hope this has been helpful for you. So I'll go over the key points once more. The most important thing is to put your accurate spreadsheet of all your expenditure. Look at everything which is going out. You know, let's say it this way: money coming in takes care of itself as long as you look after the money coming out. Look at the headings, look at where you need to spend, what you have to spend, and what you can get the price down on. And I can't guarantee it, because you might already be very thrifty, but I think for the average person, once you've done that and you've looked at your food costs, you've looked at your household bills, you've looked at all these other things, you know, especially you know, costs that you don't use, subscriptions to things. And I can't believe there's a subscription service for people to buy gym clothes. I mean, how often do gym clothes wear out? Like once practically never. And yet the idea that you have a subscription, that you get new gym clothes every month, is crazy. No one needs new clothes every month. Not even billionaires need that. They can do it if they want, but they can afford it. But they tend to give those clothes to someone else, so at least they're not totally wasted. But yeah, you know, that sort of thing is crazy amount of wastage, and it's wastage that costs you money. Simple as that. Right, so thank you very much. I really hope it's been helpful. So this has been managing your expenses, and the next one I think will be managing your maintenance. I wasn't sure which one to do first, whether to expenses or maintenance first, but when I thought about it, it actually worked better to do expenses first, because there's a lot of this that you can then implement when your maintenance schedule. So I'm trying to do these in an order. So when you watch these, if you can try and watch them in the same order, so SOPs, costs, your expenses, then maintenance. They work in a logical order. Okay, well, thanks very much. Please subscribe to the channel. Press the little bell next to the subscription. I don't know if you've noticed that one. There's a little bell just next to the subscription button. That means each time I put a video on, you just get a little discreet little message about it, just so you don't miss one. Okay, it's been a great pleasure having you with me. Thank you very much, and goodbye.